Toby Moma, your host on Health and Wellness with Dr. Toby. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. We don't want you to touch that dial. We have a great program on the show today with Dr. Shreya Saxena. She's a public health physician, trained in India, moved to the United States, worked in Russia, currently doing her master's in public health at the Louisiana State University, Shreveport, and a bastion of great information and wellness for our Louisiana and the teeming world population that watch this all around the world. We don't want you to touch that dial. She's going to share with us her heart, how God brought her to the United States, how God transitioned her to public health, and the future that God has for her. We're so excited to have Dr. Shreya Saxena on the show with us today. You're welcome, Shreya.
Thank you.
It's been a long time. We've been hoping to have this show for quite some time, and I'm finally delighted we're able to have it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. You grew up in India and you were one of many children. India is the second largest population in the world. So tell us a bit about India. Give us a little, those of us who have never left America, some of my audience have never left Louisiana, some of my audience have never left America. Can you give us a 2-minute introspection into the culture, the people, the religion, the atmosphere of India as a whole?
India, if I describe India in one word, it would be diverse. It is extremely diverse. There we have like more than 1,500 languages which we speak in India, and like this is a local saying in India that every 50 miles, the language, food pattern, clothing sense, and the caste, the religion, the lifestyle, the culture, everything changes. So it is very interesting, and historically, India has a rich culture, rich architecture, rich history. Like we are one of the oldest civilization, Indus Valley civilization. South of India are Dravidians. Northern part of India are Aryan race. So overall, like I said, if I describe India in one word, it would be diverse, very diverse.
And currently, India is transitioning from a third world economy to what they call an emerging economy.
Yes.
So it's a country of 1 billion people. I mean, tell us a bit about that number. Who makes up that number? What religion, what tribes, what ethnicities make up that 1 billion plus? Are they mostly female? Are they mostly male? Is it a predominantly elderly or teenage population? I mean, what's the predominant occupation of the people? Is it farming? Is it technology? Is it healthcare? How does India keep its rhythm going?
India, like you said, it's absolutely right. India is a progressive country. It's growing at a very fast pace for the last 10 years. In fact, I was just looking at the data, recent data, and it says that the poverty, people below poverty line, which is people who will be making $1.75 per day, like that is the baseline that they have set up. People below that in 2011 were 23.7% of Indian population, and the recent data, according to 2018, that number has dropped down to 13.7. So that is I personally think that is a big achievement on for a country to grow at that faster rate. And I think our administration is great these days. They are non-corrupt and they are working for the people and everybody in India. We have a huge middle class strata in India. So the middle class families, they are training their kids to be self-sufficient, get educated in the best possible way, in the best capacity they want, and that is, I think, is setting up a good, strong base to our community, and that is how we are growing, growing in the way we are growing. So, uh, broadly speaking, if I would say the policy of our government these days is that they are asking the people from other countries to set up their plants there, like Ford or Toyota or any other
Outsourcing,
outside. Yeah,
right?
and they are giving land for free. We have natural resources. They are exempting those companies from all the taxes for first 5 years of their setup. And then we have manpower, like you said, 1 billion people. So that is creating employment for our
Mm.
people, and it's vice versa. I mean, we are benefiting in the long run, and those companies are benefiting in the
Give me
short
an
run.
idea about the history, because a lot of people don't know that India was colonized it was they called it the subcontinent. It used to be with Bangladesh and Pakistan.
Yes.
Then the British left, and all three of you divided and went your own ways. But give us background, because you are saying India was a civilization before the British colonized it.
Hmm.
So the British came, took over, and then then
They
they
exhausted.
dominated it
Yes.
for some years, and
Yes.
then the India. So just give me a background of the history of India.
So I would go even before that. India was taken by the Mughals, and
Okay.
those people were they came from Middle East.
Oh,
So basically, India was a Hindu nation. Majority of the people living there followed Hindu culture, but I think it was in the early 1500s that India was taken over or conquered by Muhammad Ghazi and Muhammad Ghazni, and the Mughal Empire or the people from Middle East, they came over and took the majority of India as their colony. Now, when it was the few of the very very famous kings of Mughal dynasty were Akbar and Babur and Shah Jahan, and uh, they also exhausted India because India had a lot of natural resources in terms of gold, in terms of coal. It is rich. So they exhausted a lot of natural resources, but they did not exploit India because they architecturally made India very rich. Like Taj Mahal,
okay.
that was built during Mughal rule, and so every time frame had their own. When we study Indian history, it's very interesting. So every time frame had their own contribution to Indian society, and then later on British India came. East India Company, we used to call it. They came through Portuguese, the Goan side, which is the west coast of India in Indian Ocean, and then they started taking over. And it was not until 1857 that Indian public was they wanted to fight for the freedom of India, and that whole in the war for independence continued for I think good 80 years because we finally got our independence in 1947. But I think this was how it was a bad part, like you said, Bangladesh and Pakistan. Muslims and Hindus have always been like this before that, but for some reasons the selfish motives of the leaders came in, and they divided Muslims from the Hindus, and so majority of Muslims moved to Pakistan and Bangladesh, which was then called East Pakistan,
Right.
and India was all Hindu majority.
So, but going back to that, you see that the whole of the subcontinent of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, they all speak English.
Yes.
What was the language before English, before the British came? I mean, what is your local language? What are the local languages? Are
I
there more than 1,500 local languages?
And that is true. That is absolutely
Really?
true. It all started with Sanskrit. All the literature is still in Sanskrit, but majority of the people in India before Britishers spoke Hindi. That's a language for Hindus, so it's Hindi and Urdu. Urdu is for Muslims. So those are the two main languages. But now English is emerging because we have so many missionary schools and stuff. So
And you went to school with English, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
How
yes,
about Bengali? Is that another language?
yes.
Okay.
Gujarati, Bengali, Maharashtrian, Tamil, Kannada, Punjabi. I can go on and on. I'm telling you this. There's a
But they're
six.
all close to each other.
No, if
Really?
no, if you try to understand other languages, it takes you a while to understand the grammar rules are different. Everything is so different. Really.
Wow. Pretty amazing.
Yes.
Pretty amazing. Now, what are the stories we've heard about multiple ethnicity and multiple religions in India? You know, we've heard people say they've gone to India and there were seas of God. They had several gods. So is that another part of India? There's a lot of religions and a lot of gods over that country.
Yes, Dr. Mohammed. Now, this is a little different for the people here to understand. We are idol worshippers. So, like American Indians were. So we have god of sea, we have god of water, we have god of nature, we have god of like god of education and stuff like that. So it is a little bit difficult for you guys to imagine how what kind of things we believe in there, but because I grew up in a Hindu household, so it's not very difficult for me to understand what idol worshipping is.
Right.
But for idol, like it is pretty different in our thing. Like every god is given a shape of a human, and then we worship him, and that is uniform. Now that is uniform. God of air will remain God of air everywhere, but there is different beliefs to different parts of India, and that is how it is. It's a
Oh,
little
wow.
different.
So it's true that there's multiple gods. Even in the Hindu faith,
Yes, we have
there's
caste.
multiple gods.
Absolutely. We have like, broadly speaking, India has 85% of 80% of Hindus, 15% of Muslims, and 5% of Buddhists, Christian, and Sikhs. But apart from that, their Hindu community is divided into millions of subcastes and creeds. I mean,
That's another thing I want to talk about. Is there still a caste system in
absolutely,
India?
absolutely.
So people are stratified based on where they came from, what their family origin are. I mean, is it that you can't marry into another caste?
Yes.
That still happens in 2019?
I would say that again, there are all sort of people everywhere. Some educated families don't believe it anymore, but yes, there's a big chunk of India which still goes by caste. Yes, and we cannot. There is like little prohibition from not marrying intercaste and stuff like
Does
that.
the not being in a certain caste, does it limit how far you can go in life?
Yes.
Like you can't get some jobs.
No, that
Okay.
disparity is. I haven't seen it. I haven't experienced it. The kind of community I grew up in was very broad-minded. I haven't really experienced it personally, but I have heard that that happens. That happens.
Wow. I mean, it happens in Nigeria too. So so I've heard my dad tell my family members, you cannot marry that girl because she's from
See,
another
another
caste. And
cause. Yeah.
in my generation, it sounds absurd,
Absurd. Yeah.
because I
We
had
are.
a friend who married from another caste that they didn't want him to marry, and he literally had to leave the country, Nigeria, and go to England because his relatives were
Another.
trying to almost take out the wife. They were trying to attack her physically. I mean, he called me and said he needs protection for his wife
That's
because
sad.
they were accusing her of demeaning or polluting their bloodline. So it's not only in India, it's also in Africa, but I just didn't know if it was still active and current in Africa. In India, it is, right?
Some in some communities, yes.
Right.
Those communities don't want to come out of their
Mm.
small little box, but in the community, in the family I grew up, I was lucky that my father never believed in all that. My mom was like, just be on your own, be independent. That's what matters. So I was
Tell
lucky.
us about your upbringing. So you grew up in a family. How many kids? What schools did you go to? What medical schools? And what brought you to the United States?
I grew up in a Hindu family in northern part of India, and it was a town as big as Monroe. It also had a river, so well, I relate to Monroe a lot that ways. And I went to a missionary school. My dad was a lawyer. We had three siblings. My brother and sister are 15 and 16 years older to me, so they are next generation. They are absolutely different generation. But my dad was a lawyer. He did not believe in the discrepancy between a male child and a female child. So I was lucky that way. My sister was very self-dependent, so I always saw her as, that this is how I want to be. I want to be independent. I want to be self. That's how I want to be. And then I went. The major part of what I am today as a doctor, as a public health candidate, is because of my school. My school. It was a missionary school. Majority of Christians, I think, in India are Catholics, and our school is an all girls school in a small town of Jhansi. So you can imagine that the the institute, it is called IBMV, Institute of Blessed Virgin Mary. Those people are working at every level to uplift women of of the society, of the community, and make them self-dependent uh, in every possible way. And I really think that me and my sister, what we are today, are because of our, not just because of our upbringing in a family with liberal views, but also because of our school. I mean, the nuns
Mm.
there are working endlessly to uplift the women, to uplift the people of lower socioeconomic
So
strata.
I'm just going back to India. There is some female marginalization even though they've had an Indian female prime minister, Indira Gandhi, is that her name?
Yes,
So
you're
why
right.
would you say India marginalizes females if women can run for the
Become.
highest office in the land?
I would say that there is all sort of people everywhere. Some
Okay.
families still believe that okay, the male child is gonna take care of us when we grow old, and the female is gonna go to theirs. It's like you're gonna be married and you're gonna go away. You're like, or
Hmm.
uh, you're not gonna carry our surname. And for information, I did not change my surname after marriage, and I'm blessed with a great husband who understands that fact. But the thing is that yes, in some families they still think that females are not as, it's not in the long run they're not going to be as useful as the male son will be, so they compromise on their education, on their upbringing, and all the focus is on
So
the
your sister
male
is
child.
a IT
Engineer, yes.
engineer, and your brother,
Engineer.
oh, okay, he's in India,
No, all both of them are in
in
California, San
California.
Francisco.
Oh, wow, awesome, wow. So we know there's a lot of medical tourism in India. What you? So tell us a bit about your medical training, because you talked about you went to the Catholic high school,
Hmm.
and it shaped your mentality and urge for further education.
Yes.
So you left the high school and then went to college,
I went to college in Russia.
medical school.
Yes, I went to medical school in Russia.
Okay.
I knew that I wanted to become a doctor and serve the community in every possible way I can. Uh, so I went to Smolensk State Medical Academy, which is in Russia, and that was a fantastic med school. And
Moscow.
it is like 400 miles towards southwest of Moscow. It's in the European part of Russia,
Oh,
towards Polish border.
oh.
Yes, and it was a beautiful city. It was a beautiful setup, and
But you were there after the walls came down, after communism came down.
yes, after USSR was broken
Oh,
down. Yes.
wow. Interesting. And you had to learn the language. It was a 6 year program or 7 year program.
It was a 6 years program, and I had to learn language only because I had to communicate with the local people. Because the more you want to practice clinical subjects, you have to communicate with the patient in such a way that they think they're comfortable sharing their complaints and everything. So we had to learn other apart from our patient conversation, our professors were all well versed in English.
Oh,
So that was one interesting part about
interesting.
Russia.
Wow. Now, how did you blend with the Russian culture? Was there a tough time in Russia, or you blended easily?
Initially, Russia is very cold. One thing
Right.
about Russia, it's very cold and it's snowing. It's like winters most of the year, and then they have Beli Noche, which is white nights. For like good 2 months, it's daylight till 1 o'clock at night and till 4 o'clock in the morning. So it is very like weather-wise, Russia was very different. So of course, I had problems with dealing with it. I used to wear the most expensive gumboots I can, but I still used to slip and stuff. But apart from that, um, basically, with my experience of staying in different countries, I realized that apart from IQ and EQ, there has to be cultural quotient. Like I decided it was my choice that I moved to United States or I want to pursue my career in Russia. So there has to be a cultural quotient where you mingle, where you mingle in with the food habits and the lifestyle and local culture, and that makes me fit in now. And I have a wonderful partner that I enjoy every bit of my journey with him. So it's like the more I get, like even in Louisiana, when I don't know about crawfish or the local fair or the local news channel, what's current here, I do
Hmm.
not fit in. When people are talking, I do not know what to say, and I don't enjoy that. So I try to mingle with people by knowing more and more about their culture, and it's interesting. I
Wow.
mean, culture here is amazing. So
So they said poverty is still a big problem in India. You mentioned it that 80% of the population live on less than $1. So as a doctor, what do you think we can do to help that economic index? I mean, medical tourism is a big deal now in India. So what do you see at medical tourism in the future? A lot of Americans are going to India to have
yes,
surgeries and see
yes,
doctors.
yes.
So,
Um,
is that something that you think is going to continue in the future? And why is medical tourism such a big deal in India?
Um, so the hospitals which are having medical tourism, they are built on the same protocols and same guidelines as American hospitals. If you work in those hospitals, I have worked in one such hospital, so I know that it's like they are very well equipped. They have the best faculty, best medicine doctors. So if a person who doesn't have so many dollars to spend in United States, or maybe we have most of the medical tourists coming from Middle East and Africa, Nigeria, from Ethiopia. I have personally had patients from Ethiopia, from Arab. So all those patients, when they do not have the quality of medical care, or so many they don't have money to spend in their own country, they come to India and they get it for a way lesser price and the same quality of care. So yeah, it is flourishing, and it's like a $3 billion business every year. Like, it's a big, like, when you convert those $3 billion in our currency, that's a big boost to our economy. But if you say that India, how can we manage healthcare in a country like India? I think there should be increased doctors, because the doctors to patient ratio in India is too high. Like, there's like 100 patients per one doctor. So the quality of care is definitely compromised. So they should train more doctors to.
And it's still a private sector driven health industry in India, or is it public sector driven?
It really depends. The people who cannot afford private sector will definitely seek help at public and hospitals, but majority of them are private now.
Wow. So tell me, what spurred you to move to the U.S.? You graduated in 2011 from
Yes.
medical school in Russia.
Yes.
You trained in one of the best schools in Russia. You learned the language. You could have stayed there or gone back to India, but you chose to move over to the United States of America. What spurred that initiative? 8 years ago.
8 years ago, yes, it was part of it was because my family was here, and part of it was that the quality of care, quality of medical practice in United States is mind blowing. It is awesome. The researches and the paperworks which are happening in United States are amazing, and that if you're motivated to actually do something for the society, and it has long lasting effect, United States is the place, because they are very progressive and they are doing a lot of
So
research.
cutting edge research, and since you came to the U.S., give us a little insight into what you've done so far. Since you moved here in
2016.
you moved here 2016. You worked for a bit in India
Yes.
after 2011.
Yes.
So you worked in India 2012, 2013, 2014.
Yes, sir.
Then you came here 2015.
Hmm.
Okay. And tell us what you've been doing since 2015.
It has been an amazing experience. I was in California for some time, then I was in New York, and then I moved to Louisiana, Monroe. It has been a wonderful experience so far. I have worked at different, I have volunteered, I've done volunteer work at different hospitals, and now when I'm in public health, which is at LSU Shreveport, it is giving me a broader uh, platform to explore my options everywhere in in healthcare industry. So public health, I think, is an amazing course, complementary course to do. So yeah, I'm enjoying that part.
So, and you did some volunteer work in India, I think.
Mhm.
You said there was what we call it here is a non-for-profit you
Yes,
worked with.
and
Tell us a bit about that.
Sevak. So Sevak in our language means worker. Uh, So this is the Sevak project is actually an American project which runs in India. It is financed from through American bureaucrats. Uh, but what it basically does is that trains one person in India who is a 12th grader, like who is past 12th grade. That is the minimum qualification you need, and they will appoint one Sevak per one village, per one country, neighborhood. So, and that one person will be responsible to provide clean water. Now, these things might sound very different and non-realistic to your audience, but in developing countries, there's issue with
Oh,
hygiene,
definitely.
with pure water. People don't have access to hygienic
Clean
water
water.
to drink, and then they have infections and stuff like that. So this person is basically responsible to provide fresh set up a huge RO system, which is like a water filtration machine in countries like in the most interior regions you can think of in the in the western states of Gujarat, and then this person will be educated on how to cook hygienically, like how to wash vegetables and fruits before cooking, or just basic stuff like how what kind of a diet should a diabetic person follow. Like a person living in a village will have access to a hospital maybe once in 2 3 months. Now, after that 5 minutes visit to the doctor, that person is all by himself. So this Sevak will train that person at his level to eat right, to have the medicines on time, to take medicines, where to get it from at a cheaper level. So he is like a well-versed person. I used to visit these villages and educate the women on menstrual health and
Wow.
stuff like that. So
And
we
we're
do
going to
that.
come back and talk about those public health initiatives. Our time is up, but I want you to come back next week. We're going to continue what we've been sharing with Dr. Shreya. She's going to delve into the public health initiatives that are very dear to her heart. She's going to talk about immunization, smoking cessation, prenatal counseling, and care of women who are pregnant. I want you to stay tuned because she's going to be sharing things that you can prevent sickness by doing them. I don't want you to miss it. This is Dr. Toby Moma, Dr. Shreya telling you Jesus is Lord. Don't miss our show next week. Join us at our November Holy Ghost night, November 22nd, Friday, at the Clarion in 11 p.m. God bless you. Jesus is Lord. Amen.